I'm Sasha DeWitt, and this is the Studio Notes Podcast, the show where I chat with artists about the real-life stuff of being an artist. And today, I am interviewing myself. So I thought that I wanted to do an interview with myself at some point, which sounds a little bit weird, but in my brain makes sense because I wanted to talk about my own journey into art and, my own creative journey that I've been on. And I got a little bit nervous about interviewing myself. It's kind of silly. I got just as nervous about doing this as I do to interview a guest. But I'm going to go ahead with it. And I even wrote down some little questions for myself, just like I do when I'm interviewing other people to sort of hopefully keep me on track, and hopefully I won't just ramble and sound like some nutty artist who never really speaks to other human beings that much. But the first thing I wanted to do, I thought I would start out by just thanking everybody who has listened to the podcast. I love getting to see that people are listening to it and people are sharing it. If you do enjoy it, definitely share and let other people know that you are enjoying it, so that way we can spread the word. As well as that, so thank you so much for listening. And also I wanted to thank the people who have been on and been interviewed by me. So I know a lot of people, a lot of artists are introverts or shy, or to do this makes them nervous. So it is actually really brave to be interviewed and to come on and do this. And so I wanted to thank the people who have interviewed and thank the listeners and thank the people I've interviewed. I'm probably going to say a lot, but I'm going to edit that out. Maybe. We'll see. Sometimes I'm a bit lazy with editing. I usually just listen back and think, that sounds fine. And we're all humans, and that's exactly what humans sound like when they're thinking and stringing their thoughts together. So I might just jump right in and start with the question that I've been asking everyone this time around, which is like, how did you start your journey? Also, I suppose with other people, when I interview them, I give a little tiny synopsis of the type of art that they do, but the thing is with myself, I feel like I've been all over the place. Sometimes hard to have that distance from your own practice. I started out in illustration and have moved into painting, but I haven't quite developed as far as I'd like on either of those paths. So I don't really know where I am. I don't really know how I would describe myself. So maybe that's something that I'll keep working on over this next year to sort of try to have some vision to help myself figure out what path it is that I am going down. But maybe it's okay not to know. I think that's one of the things, speaking with all the other artists, that keeps coming up, is that a lot of us don't know. The path is not marked. We just are going forward. We're doing what we enjoy. And we're trying to stay true to ourselves and most of us are exploring something or investigating and just creating. There's just that real desire to create. But anyway, I'm going to go back to, where did I start? How did I get started? And my journey has been really long. And I will say right now, I'll let you know that I am going to talk about health issues and grief, and just to let you know that those things are going to come up. So if you feel like that's not something you want to listen to, that's fine. And you can, choose to skip this episode. Oh, and I'm going to talk about some surgery as well. So just to let you know that those topics are going to come up. Because it's all part of how I got started. So when I was 35, 15 years ago, well, really probably 16 years ago, around about when I was 34, I wanted to learn how to draw. I had never drawn in my life. I did not doodle. I just was, I don't know, that just did not interest me. I enjoyed writing and I enjoyed words, and I was really a wordy person. I love writing, and I love editing, and I love everything to do with writing. I love stories. But yeah, about 16 years ago, just something in me thought that I wanted to learn how to draw. And at the time, sick. I was actually sick almost every day. I didn't know what I was sick with. I was going to the doctor every single week. I was in a lot of pain. Some days I could not walk. And I was having to go to the hospital and be put on morphine drips sometimes for the pain. It was that intense. And during that time, well, I'm going to go back a tiny bit further. When I was 5 years old, this is sort of crucial to why I didn't draw in my childhood or even paint or anything like that. I really didn't. When I was 5, I have this very vivid memory of being babysat. And the teenager who was babysitting me was really nice and kind, and we were sitting there coloring in like a coloring book, a Disney coloring book. I feel like I remember that there was a Snow White character. I was 5, she was probably 15 or 16. And I remember at the end of our coloring, I looked over and saw her coloring, and it was so beautiful and so perfect to my 5-year-old eyes. And I saw such a huge gap between what she was doing and what I had done. And I remember feeling really embarrassed and ashamed of like what I had done. And even though she had said really good words about it, I just remember feeling this like real despair over my coloring, which of course as an adult I look back and think, well, that's absurd. You were 5 and she was 15. But at that point, you know, I was just comparing myself to someone else. And that was the first time where that comparison, the terrible thing that is comparison, took hold. And actually, after that, I just really didn't want to do it anymore because I knew I could never make as beautiful a Snow White as she did. The funniest thing about this memory as an adult, I sometimes wonder, is it even a real memory or is it a false memory? And where did this memory come from? But I do think it is one of the reasons why I didn't go down that avenue, but also nobody in my family drew or painted or anything like that. And they're all, I would say they're all wordy people. You know, my dad was a newspaper editor, so I think we were much more into words than into sort of visual art. And after that, the only other thing that happened was at school when I was around probably 10 or 11, and the art teacher at school was so dismissive. And I think a lot of people go to, you know, you're really lucky if you have a good art teacher at school who encourages you and who inspires you. A lot of the people that I teach now and a lot of people that I speak with actually, and maybe this was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, maybe art at that time, maybe art teaching at that time had some way to go, basically. But I do remember she had us doing observational drawings. And my house had really old stuff. My parents do not buy anything new. They are not the first people to go out and get a VCR, not the first people to go out and get the microwave. So everything was really old TV that I think my uncle had given to us, and it had these, what they called rabbit ears up on top, which were like the antenna things that you used to have to wiggle around to get reception. And I drew that, and I remember her writing on my drawing that I had been a liar, that I hadn't done observation, and that wasn't real because nobody had rabbit ears on their TV anymore. And I was so embarrassed, and I remember that from art class, and I remember we had a few more tussles like that where she never believed that I'd done any observational drawings, because the things I was drawing, she would always say, nobody has a phone like that, nobody has this. And my parents would write her little notes saying, that is our TV, that is our phone. But it completely put me off art classes. I didn't do any more art classes until much, much later. Until really, when I was about 34, 35, I took back up wanting to learn how to draw. But I was always creative in other ways. So I did a lot of drama and I did a lot of writing. And so that definitely was there. But I think in my 30s, I just felt like something was missing. And to me, it seemed like maybe that visual side of my life and what I wanted to represent. And I thought it would even make me a better writer if I had a better understanding of what I was seeing and how I was seeing it. So anyways, I signed up for some courses at City Lit, and I think it was like a once a week still life course, and I went on that. And for the first time, the tutor was amazing. And for the first time, I really felt like I loved learning how to see. I loved learning. It changed how I saw the world, what I learned in that one class. You know, everything became so much more beautiful. The light during the day, at different times of the day, became more beautiful. The leaves on the trees, and it really, really opened up how I see the world, and it completely changed how my brain processes things. And I thought that was fascinating. That whole experience was fascinating to me. And I could feel like how genuinely happy it made me to be able to see the world in this completely new way. And then that teacher was so encouraging, really well taught. He taught art how a lot of art classes are taught. So it was a much more modern approach. And maybe he was just a very good tutor. Some people are just naturally good teachers, and I think this guy was one of them. And then he said to me, well, why have you ever considered doing a foundation course? And I had not at that time, because I'd never drawn before. But he was just so encouraging, and I think he could see something in, even though my drawings were, stiff and not any freedom, and I was still, had no idea what I was doing, and I was probably trying to be perfect and to draw, so there wasn't much of me as the artist in there. I was just trying to draw as I thought people should draw. But clearly, I think he saw some spark, maybe ideas or some ability there, and so he did talk to me about, maybe you want to try to do more. But at that time, as I was saying earlier, so this is a roundabout way, I was very sick, and I was getting sick all the time. And I found out that I had endometriosis. So that was the diagnosis. So I finally got diagnosed with endometriosis after several years, decades even, of being misdiagnosed. So endometriosis is when the lining of your uterus grows outside. And in my case, I had to go ahead and have surgery to get properly diagnosed. But I had sort of stage 4 endometriosis, which means the whole of my pelvic organs were covered and they were all stuck together. And it was, so I had been in a lot of pain, and I had a massive cyst in there that was like a blood cyst from the endometrioma. So that was in there, and that was twisting my ovary, and that was causing me a great deal of pain. And so that was the first surgery. And then after that, I started to feel so much better because they had put me on something called Zoladex. And the 3 months where I was on Zoladex were the first time I had been pain-free in decades. I didn't realize how much of a toll being in that much pain had on my ability to do anything and my energy levels. So once I was put on Zoladex, which puts you into this false menopause, So my hormones were shut down, and I had so much energy, and it was really amazing to have all this energy. Then after that, what happened? So these are sort of the things leading up to how I did decide to do illustration and drawing, and to take it further. After that, I had my first surgery, and they found out that I had, pretty severe endometriosis, and the whole of my pelvic area was coated in stuff. And they were able, after I had a really long surgery, 2 or 3 hours, they were able to get me clean it all out. That's how I think of it. They were able to make me shiny organs down there and unstick stuff. And then I had to have another surgery 3 months later. And that surgery, they made a mistake, and they ended up cutting an artery and a couple of veins. And basically, I almost bled to death. So this 20-minute surgery that was going to go in and look around and see if anything had been coming back or anything like that, ended up being about 12-hour life-saving surgery. I had 8 blood transfusions to save my life. And so thank you to all the blood donors out there, because without you, I wouldn't be here, and my child wouldn't be here. So I always thank people who donate blood, because that day I received 8 units of blood, maybe more, but the 8 units saved my life. So thank you. As I was waking up in ICU, I only had one thought in my head, and that was just how much I wanted to draw, to be alive so I could draw. I think that's a really strange thing to be thinking about, but that moment made everything so clear to me about, this is really important to me. This is what I want. I want to draw. And I also knew at that point, I'd never been one of these people who's I really want to have children. But I also knew at that point, yes, I think I'd really like to have a child as well. So it was drawing and a child were the 2 things that I thought about. And so I knew that I wanted to take drawing further, but I still was not really that sure about how I would do that, until I went to the house of a friend who was a comic artist. He was an illustrator, animator, and he had this amazing library of all these kinds of works at his house, things that I had just never come across in my life. Graphic novels. I had never seen these types of books before. So I was very ignorant, to be someone who's traveled the world, and I was very ignorant about especially visual arts and illustration. And while I was at his house, I came across a Harvey Pekar book, probably My Cancer Year, I think it's called. And I was just riveted by the book and the story and the topic matter. And so I think this friend had lots of other books as well that were about, they were graphic novels, but maybe they're about different health issues. And anyways, he just had graphic novels about everything. So, there were ones that were about war correspondence, or just a whole area that I did not know existed. I was fascinated by it all. And so I went away and I started to, seek these things out and seek out these graphic novels. And I think I really had a connection with what the people were drawing, the subject matter that they were drawing, that combination of images and words was so important, the storytelling that was going on. And I thought, yeah, this is what I would like to try to do. And so I think I started drawing a small, comics about my, endometriosis and what I was going through, because I thought not only would this be something that helps me kind of heal, but also it's something that I can share with other people. And it's, something that maybe other people who have endometriosis can read. And, anyways, it's about making connections. It's about sharing. It's about empowerment. I guess that's where I started out from on that journey. And so after that, so this is all, I'm still 34, basically. And I did successfully get pregnant using IUI. That's where you go to the hospital and, they don't use a turkey baster, but it's like turkey baster method to get pregnant. So I was supposed to have IVF, but I didn't have enough eggs. So my body produced like one little egg. Well, and that little egg became my child. So I was very lucky, felt very fortunate to have NHS and to have that health care provided for me. And that was really wonderful. So I became pregnant. And during that time, I kept attending those classes, those like still life classes at City Lit. Then, so I had my child and was still trying to draw, still doing the comic. And then when my child was about 10 months old, my husband died in a road accident. So sort of overnight, I became a lone parent. And that was, of course, a very difficult time. And I think for me, through it all, so 2 things saved me. One is being a parent, especially to a young child. You just immediately, everything in my brain sort of focused on being the parent that is here and trying to do the best job I could do as a parent. And then the second thing was drawing. It just would not leave me. It stayed with me. That desire to draw and create stayed with me. And I honestly think those 2 things are what kept me going through a very difficult, very dark time. So that happened when my child was about 10 months old. So by the time they were about a year and a half, I knew that I wanted to take it further and that I needed help in order to take it further. Help being, I felt like I needed to do a course. And I was still into sort of the comics and graphic novel type stuff at that time. So I was looking for sequential illustration or narrative illustration. There were not a whole lot of courses at the time. There was one down in Falmouth that I was looking at. There was a course in Brighton that was illustration, but I knew that they also did some bits around sequential illustration. And then there was one through Oxford Brooks, which was just sequential illustration. I think it was called like Illustration, Narrative, and Sequential. It has a very long title. And it was a BA. And I applied for that, and I got in, even though I basically didn't really even have that much of a portfolio, because even though I had been drawing a few things, I don't remember going to the interview with very much of anything. Potentially because I probably hated what I was doing at the time. I probably could see this huge gap between what I wanted it to be and where I was with my technical skills at that point. So I think that, I sometimes will just trash everything, throw it all out, get rid of stuff. I can be really harsh that way. So I think I showed up with, I feel like, just a couple of sketchbooks and a lot of ideas and a lot of passion. And probably, when you're towing your infant around with you, people are like, okay, let's give her a chance. I was also lucky that for some reason the people in charge of the illustration department that day were all ill, and not lucky, but they were sick. And the person who interviewed me was from graphic design. And I have since been told that in general, like with graphic design, it's more about the ideas behind things as opposed to, specifically your sketchbook or your drawing technical skills. Anyway, I got on the course And that was amazing for me because it was exactly what I needed. Partly because it also provided me with childcare. So it was done through Oxford Brookes, but it was actually set out in Swindon. So I moved to Swindon with my then 2.5-year-old child. And it meant that my child was able to be, the college had a creche on site, a nursery on site. It was the most amazing nursery. I'm forever grateful for those people at Little Stars Nursery. They were wonderful. So my child was in a safe, secure, wonderful and nurturing environment, which meant that I could go off and study full-time, doing a BA for 3 years in illustration. And I remember when I started that first day going into class, and I was so horrified. I was so embarrassed. I thought, people are going to want to see if I can draw, and I still really felt like I could not draw. I didn't want anybody to see how I drew because everything was still so stiff back then, and I had no, proportions would be way, way off. And anyways, I just was a real beginner still, and a lot of the younger people had been drawing their whole lives, since they were young kids, and I think, but the truth is everybody felt that way, really. Everybody's a bit shy about showing their stuff. Even if you're the most amazing draftsperson in the world, everybody's a bit like, this is a bit private and it's very personal. So I don't think how I felt on that first day was any different to how anyone else felt. And over those 3 years, it was a really good course and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot about myself. I had gone down that illustration path because it was sort of what I knew through the graphic novels. But over those 3 years, I kind of learned that I really think a lot more conceptually than maybe a straightforward career in illustration would allow for sometimes. I think in a very abstract, maybe fine arts way, I would even say. And my final show was very, was probably much more leaning towards fine art than traditional illustration. I did an animation that was dealing with schizophrenia, and as well as I had done a blind embossed printmaking of this shoe of my husband's that I had drawn several times, and it was like the laces were all tangled. Anyways, it looked like a path to his life. And so those were that was the final show. But I did understand why I chose an illustration as well. It was also very practical. I understood how people made money from illustration. I did not understand how contemporary artists made money, the gallery system, anything like that. So with illustration, I understand that very transactional side of it. Somebody wants you to illustrate, you get a brief, you do it, they pay you. So for me, that was a very straightforward way of thinking, and I needed to be able to support myself as, the sole earner in the house. While I was on the illustration program, Martin Salisbury, who was head of the MA in children's book illustration at Cambridge School of Arts, came and did a talk. And I just was really impressed with his talk. I loved how he spoke about having observational drawing being at the heart of the course. I knew that they did printmaking modules. I had seen a lot of the people who were coming out of the course who were publishing at the time. I really enjoyed, that they were pushing boundaries in what it meant to be a children's illustrator and what it meant to be an illustrator full stop. And so after I graduated from the BA in sequential illustration, even though I recognized in myself that I was probably more towards sort of a fine arts approach, more conceptual, I still love illustration. So I still thought, because they place observational drawing at the heart of the course, that was a path that I wanted to go down. And it seemed very nurturing as well. And so I applied for that and I got on and I moved to Cambridge. And by this time, my, child's about 6 or 7 years old. And so I did the part-time course for 2 years. And that was wonderful. And it was everything that I thought it would be. It was like this sort of hothouse environment of being near people who are really, really talented illustrators. And that communication that comes up, we all spoke with each other. And I think just seeing what other people are doing and people being supportive, it was a very supportive environment. But it, of course, is a university environment. So there are some, there's always this gap between what university as an institution want you to do and what tutors probably know is realistic within the illustration industry, and then what you as a student want to do. So I think this goes into, even though I went down the route of doing a BA and an MA, that was sort of what I needed at the time. I needed connections with other people. I needed deadlines, I needed accountability, because otherwise it would have been too easy to get subsumed in the whole motherhood thing. I think as a lone parent, it would have been very easy to have that be taken over, and I'm just parenting all the time, and to lose that part of myself. So for me, that's why I decided to go down that route. But I love speaking with self-taught artists, and I really want people who are self-taught to start to value what they do and where they do it from. And I think when I spoke with Emma of We Blue Press, she was speaking about being self-taught. And we didn't speak about it at the time, but within a day of me doing that podcast, I came across the words living masters. So someone was speaking about how throughout their life, they hadn't gone to a university, but throughout their life, they had been gathering these skills through, little tiny one-off courses and just them teaching themselves and all these different things that they were doing. And I loved that idea of living masters, because I genuinely believe in sort of lifelong education, in whatever form it takes. So it doesn't have to be through, something as structured as a university. But for example, it could be through a community center. It could be through just courses. They're all over the place. You can find so many good teachers out there nowadays. And I think that's really important to value not only what you're taught by other people, but what you're taught by other artists and what you're taught by yourself. I mean, nothing can beat that. And it's more about maintaining a confidence in what you're doing, that it has value and that you have value. And even though I'm no longer doing an MA or a BA, I'm still doing this living masters. I'm always seeking out ways to improve what I'm doing, my skills, not just creatively, but also on the business side of things. So I just wanted to say that while I'm here, that I love self-taught artists, and you need to big up yourselves. And moving on from that, so I finished the MA. I set up a business. At the time, now this is where I go off the rails. I don't go off the rails, but I set up a business. I thought I wanted to do surface pattern design. I saw other people doing surface pattern design. It made sense to me. I thought, I can start my own business. I know nothing about business, but I thought I'll start my own business. I designed patterns to put on kitchenware, so like aprons and oven mitts and things like that. And honestly, that was a big mistake, because the marketing that it takes to sell stuff like that is perhaps not my strong suit. And plus, I definitely feel like when I was doing that, I felt a real gap between, there was no emotion in it for me. I just felt like I was trying to find my feet and trying to find a way to run a business and be an illustrator and do it independently. And so, and I definitely question every day, why am I doing this? The world does not need more aprons or oven gloves. For me, it was just too much. I think I just felt like I was adding to a problem that I saw out there of people having too much stuff. And I just felt icky when I was trying to market it and sell it. So I left that behind. And then the next thing I went in to do was I set up children's magazine called Papa. Now, this I really did love. I absolutely loved doing this. I created a quarterly magazine based around sort of themes like Beatles and space, and it was an activity magazine. So the idea is that, the pages, you can cut them out, you draw, you make stuff. And I can't remember, I think it was 48 pages, around there. But I did the whole thing myself because I didn't have any budget to hire anybody else to do anything with me. So I was designing, writing, editing, sending it to the publishers and distributing it all on my own. And I think over that year, I did an entire year of the publication. I learned so much, but in the end, I did stop it because it just wasn't profitable enough. I wasn't able to scale it probably to be big enough so that where it would be profitable or support itself. And I'm okay with that. I learned a lot during that year. I learned a lot about what I enjoyed doing as an illustrator or at that time as a children's illustrator in that sort of area. But always, I think there was this nagging, even when I enjoyed doing that. So I don't think there was any downside to that. I think, though, there was this sort of nagging in the back of my head about something that's more than illustration or something that's more than what I'm doing with this magazine. I guess I still felt like something was missing for me, and I didn't see myself being able to do that for long term. I just couldn't see myself wanting to do that, and because I felt like if you get it to be big enough where that it's profitable, you're then losing out on the bit that I enjoy, which is the actual being the illustrator, not being the publisher. So maybe that's what I realized, was that I wanted to be the illustrator. I did, or, the creative. I don't want to do all the behind the scenes and all the stuff that it takes to get a magazine out, the business side of stuff. And so around that time, I started to volunteer at a place called Cambridge Community Arts. And I volunteered as an assistant in the classroom. And the course that they were teaching that I was volunteering on was a year-long course, and it was a drawing course. And that was probably one of the best decisions I made in my whole entire career as an artist, was to do that volunteer. Now, at the time, I could not afford to volunteer. I really needed to earn money, but for me, I saw some value in getting back into the classroom. I had previously, before I'd done all of this, I'd been a teacher as an English language teacher, so English as a second language, and I loved teaching. I absolutely loved teaching. I loved being in the classroom. So this chance to volunteer in a classroom as an assistant was really meaningful to me because I had not done it for a very long time, and I'd never been in a classroom as a teacher, and I was so unsure of myself and my knowledge as an artist. I still very much felt on the back foot because I hadn't drawn, until I was 35. And so I felt like I'd come to it late in life, relatively late if you consider a lot of the people have been drawing their whole lives. So I felt like 35 was pretty late, and I had no confidence in myself or my knowledge. But this Cambridge Community Arts is such a wonderful, wonderful organization because I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. They are so nurturing. That's the word I'm looking for. They are so nurturing. They are not just nurturing to their students, they are also nurturing to their teachers, and they are nurturing to their volunteers. So for me, being back in the classroom, it really helped me to start gain confidence. And the teacher at that time, on that class, she was so wonderful at just seeing my knowledge and being like, well, you could actually teach this class. You don't, and it was really nice to have someone just say that, like, oh, you could actually do this as well. You have the knowledge, you have the skill. And I think there was one time where actually she was sick, and so I did get to step in and I taught one of the sessions. And really, that whole environment gave me the confidence and the courage to think, yes, I can do this. And so at that time, I was just getting ready to, I was going to do more stuff in person and really start to try to get out there and take this confidence. And then lockdown happens. And this was about 2020 by this time. And boy, that changed everything. But for me, it changed stuff in a really good way because I've been volunteering with CCA. They decided to take their program online, and they were very proactive about getting online really early. And they offered, they said, if you want to teach, just let us know and we'll support you and help you figure out how to do all this online teaching stuff. And of course, I jumped on the opportunity. I was like, yes, I would love to do this. And they really were so supportive, and they helped us learn how to do videos and set up online classrooms. And we all went through it together, learning how to do this. And I taught loads of classes over lockdown, and it really helped me keep my sanity. I love my students, are wonderful. CCA students are wonderful. And the support that I received from CCA as well has always been wonderful. And like I said, best decision I ever made was to volunteer for them. They really helped me grow in confidence that, yes, I am an artist. Yes, I know what I'm doing. I do have knowledge to share. And they showed me the importance of what is important to me in a job. And that is, I can't just create art. I have to be able to share that creativity and share with other people what it means to be a creative. And to hope that other people find that being creative is something that can help them in their lives and to help them through hard times as well. I think creativity really gives us that reason to keep going and that reason to, to just keep trying. So for me, that's what creativity has brought. And I feel like that's what I share when I share with other people, like, let's be creative, let's draw, let's have fun, let's do enjoyable stuff together. So during that time, CCA, I started teaching with them a lot, helped me grow my confidence. Then, at that time, so my child was now, becoming a teenager and had been getting bullied at school quite horribly. So I spent a whole year just trying to figure out how to get, my teen out of that situation. And, can we change schools? And because, everything was in between lockdown and sometimes not lockdown, and my child was suddenly sitting in the same room as their bully for like 8 hours a day for the whole of the school day. Really horrible situation. So, I got my teen out of school and started going online full time. But I knew that wasn't a solution because I felt like, they're a sociable person and I wanted them to get out of the house and I didn't want them to become a recluse. So I looked and did a lot of research that year and found out about the Brit School, and my teen applied and got on to do interactive digital design, which is like animation and graphic novels. And so we moved down to South London so that my teen would be able to commute to school by train. So that whole year I sort of was teaching, but I wasn't doing a lot in a sort of personal way with art. But I did decide I would apply. I knew that I had been experimenting during that time with painting. So I think I was moving away from the illustration side. And I was experimenting with painting and painting bigger. And I was really enjoying what I was doing. And so I saw that I wanted to move away from the illustration and the sort of client briefs. And I had done some other stuff that I don't have this is already getting long, so I don't have forever to talk about this. But I've been doing some freelance work, basically. But I knew that I wanted to go away from that I needed to paint. I need to be my own boss, basically. I think working to briefs does not suit my brain. And I was figuring out that actually, even though I said I could see this, like how you get paid in illustration, once you become sort of a freelance illustrator, it's like actually it probably doesn't matter whether you do freelance illustration or contemporary art. It's really tricky to figure out how to do the business side of things and get paid for anything. So I might as well go in and find what my passion is and find out what it is that really gets me up in the morning. And I think painting, experimenting, and process are the things that really get me up. So I had started painting, but I was still thinking around stories. But I knew I wanted to move away from illustration. And at that time, I had come across the Arts Council Develop Your Creative Practice grant. And I read up on that, and I thought, yeah, this is what I need to apply for, because I need to pivot away, and I need to get myself, so my teenager's growing up, is now 14, and I'm thinking, in 4 years, they're going to be out of the house or off to college, or they might still be in the house, but, they're going to be off being independent. And it really became this chance for me as someone who's been lone parenting for a long time to think about what my future is. I get to be more independent as my teenager gets to be more independent, where we get to grow together that way. We, their independence therefore gives me independence. I had been, as a lone parent, you're really restricted, especially of a young child. I was really restricted to the house, how far I could travel. The school day and the school year has governed a lot of my life for the past, however long, since, past 11 years, I guess. But now I'm getting my freedom. So that felt really nice. So I applied for the DYCP grant, and I got it. And I cried. The day that I found out that I got it, I just cried, because I knew that this grant would give me the time that I needed in order to move away from illustration, but to use all the knowledge that I've gained, all those things that I was seeing as failures. And at the time I applied, I really, really felt so bad about myself. And I thought, all I've done is fail. But actually, getting the grant made me think, well, maybe I haven't failed. Maybe I've just been learning, and it's just been a hard learning process. I got the grant and I cried, but I did know, I thought, yes, this is going to help me consolidate and really become solid, grow a solid foundation for what the future can be for me as an artist. That does not mean the path is easy or anything like that. It's not. And every day I go through about 100 different emotions and thoughts. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? What will work? What won't work? But anyway, just having the grant made me feel like, yes, someone believes in me as an artist. Someone believes in my ability. And Cambridge Community Arts gave me the most wonderful letter of recommendation, and I'm grateful for that as well. It was such a wonderful recommendation, and I think that helped me get the grant. Anyways, I spent a month researching the grant. I spent a month writing my application. I attended online seminars about how to write your grant. I actually have written a blog post about it, so if you want to find out more about the resources I used to write my grant, you can go onto my blog, and I think it's called like DYCP, funding or something. I only have 4 posts on the blog at the moment, so it's not that hard to find. Anyway, I got the grant, and that really, really has changed my life as an artist. I was able to get a studio space. They don't pay for everything with studio spaces, but because I wanted to paint big, and I am in a very small house, I needed that space in order to, realize what I wanted to do. So I was able to get a studio space, and I was able to get, some of the supplies that I needed. More importantly, I was able to pay myself for the time that I needed in order to just paint and think and learn. And also, as part of the grant, I received money to get mentorships. I received money to go on workshops. And part of the reason why this podcast started is because I said I would start a podcast where I would interview other artists. And it was really about, the application was really about me growing as an artist, but also me starting to make connections with other artists and to start to build a community and to hopefully share with other people like what I'm doing, what my journey has been. And I think that's the thing this year that has come in focus to me, is that at the heart of my practice and the heart of who I am, it's all about sharing. It's all about inspiring other people. It's all about, this community of people who want to create, just creating. Because honestly, there is a lot of bad stuff out there in the world. And when we question ourselves and we think, why are we doing this? Or this seems so decadent, or, it seems not worthy. But I look around and I think about all the things that are out there that are nonsense. And I think at least if we are creating, we are doing it with, trying to make this world a better place, trying to understand our thoughts, trying to help other people understand their thoughts, just trying to make some sort of communication and community and to build something that is good. That's how I see it. That's how I see art. Even when art is questioning and even when art is very dark, there's still something to it that is, about community and discussion and thoughts and making the world a better place. So that's how I see it. That's what this year has done. I have been able to explore. I have been able to go down a lot of wrong paths. I think I have finished the year knowing a lot more about who I am as an artist. That doesn't always mean I know how I'm going to paint or what I'm going to paint. Those things, are still sometimes seem a bit distant. But what I do understand is the heart of my practice is about sharing with other people and making community. And that is one of my goals over the next year, is to sort of try to share and build community around making art. I don't really know what all that means, but that's what it means to me. And so when I think about my art practice, I think about teaching, I think about mentoring and coaching. I think about those things as ways to help other people who want to be creative, be more creative, and realize their goals and realize their projects. Whether that's as a professional or as a hobbyist, it doesn't matter to me. Just doing it is enough. So I think, so that's, sharing is at the heart of my practice. And I think in the next year, so the things that I want to focus on are the teaching, workshops, mentoring and coaching, plus doing the podcast. That has probably been the biggest surprise. I have enjoyed doing this so much. I love having conversations with other artists and people in general about art, whereas I can be really awkward at parties and, I'm not great at small talk at all. I have discovered that I really, really enjoy chatting with artists about what they're doing. And perhaps it's because, I think probably 90% of my day is thinking about art and artwork and drawing and what I'm doing and creating stuff. And the other 10% is parenting. It's probably not. That's probably wrong. It's probably 60-40 now that my child's getting more independent. But you know what I mean. I spend a good portion of my day just thinking about creating. So anyways, I think I've just lost my trail of thought. That's because I've been hopefully rambling on for 55 minutes now. But I hope that if you have listened to it and you've listened this far, that you have found some inspiration, that the things that I always want to let people know is it doesn't matter how old you are when you start this journey. If you are really passionate about it, just go for it. I met a woman in her mid-70s at the Open Studios recently, and she was speaking as though she had left it too late and she was trying to learn how to draw. And I just kept chatting with her and saying, it's not too late. As long as you just keep doing it, you'll get better at it. And that's all that matters, is that you just keep doing it because you're enjoying it, and that it's not too late. So yeah, it's not too late. And what was the other thing I was thinking about the journey? It's not too late. We're going to do a living masters. We're going to have confidence in ourselves, whether we're self-taught or whether we've gone down the university route. And we're going to find community and connections with people. That's it. Artwork is about connecting. And I can't remember anything else. I've been rambling. Let me see. I have some notes. Let me go find my notes and see what they say. Oh, hello. Oh, and my teenager has been texting me. I will not read that right now. I'm just going to go look through my notes, and then I will get off to text my teenager. Yeah, so the podcast was a huge surprise. I've loved doing it. I'm going to continue this into the future. I'm going to be interviewing gallerists and curators and more artists, and I might do another little talking of me, but maybe not so much of a ramble. Yeah, so I think that's it. That's me interviewing myself. Art of practice sharing. Yep. Helping others find and make the most of creativity. So, again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to anybody who's made it this far into my ramble. I really appreciate the support that everyone has given me. If you've taken time to write a review, or to even just click the 5 stars, hopefully. And if you take the time to share it on social media, I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. Hopefully you're all still awake and you haven't fallen asleep. And goodbye until next time. Big shout out to the Arts Council, who have given funding for this podcast as part of my DYCP grant. So thank you.